Hey everybody, this is Percy LaPointe with Lawn and Landscape Podcast. Today I wanted to discuss a topic that I like to try to touch on pretty much on a daily basis, which is managing employees, managers, how to address certain things, whether it be good or bad, and just different training techniques. So let's start off with your basic managers. Maybe some of you might have a general manager or project manager, or maybe just guys that work for you and you're still kind of out in the field. At some point you will have to manage your managers. So the first point, if you're trying to get to the point where you're going to take yourself out of the field, so you have your managers basically running a lot of the day-to-day operations as you're working on other things, the first recommendation I'm going to have to make is to kind of let yourself lose a little bit of control. If you're anything like me, I'm a control freak. I wanted my hands on everything. I wanted to know everything what's going on. And you are going to get to a point, if you're anything like me, where that's going to cause more problems than it actually helps you. And what I mean by that is, if you hired correctly, and fortunately I did, but what I was doing was I was kind of clipping their wings, so I wasn't allowing them to spread their wings and fly. So I basically had to take a backseat approach whenever I got to that point where they were starting to take the reins and I was actually, backing out of it. I felt unneeded or unnecessary to the business, kind of, sort of. And these guys were running it. And when you're making that transition, only those guys that have made that transition know what I'm kind of talking about, because it's different. It's new. It's uncomfortable. It's going to be a problem. So get kind of used to it. Now, I'm not saying completely back out where you're off doing other things and those guys are running day to day. I manage my managers and let them run the company. So when you get to that point, it's very, very nice. Now, I'm always coaching and training those managers. We question, we role play. From answering the phones to answering questions about, okay, what is this weed here? Anything that I think that they lack at, I try to round the knowledge to where they don't just know one thing as a manager. They need to know everything so they can teach, train, and we can replicate the process. And so I kind of use that same scenario whenever we're training employees. I will have sometimes hands-on training with employees. If I have a manager that's busy, I'll take a new employee and I'll train them up for a day or so they can see from my perspective. And I just want to make sure that the training is still how I want it done. So that's part of my control problem. But that just helps me, so I can kind of make sure that every so many employees that we keep the same training process going. So that's just a little bit on what we've done. Now, our managers get most of the training and they train all employees. We put them through training from, let's say if it's on the lawn maintenance side of things, where it's mowing, weed eating, edging. We completely make sure that they know what they need to do before they go out there in the field. And then we do a lot of video training, and a lot of our safety training is actually on video as well. So we do a lot of stuff with video where we will package it, make sure they watch it, show us the techniques, and then we kind of sign off on them ready to go out in the field. And let's face it, guys, sometimes I may have to just throw somebody out there to the wolves and let them survive, but I always put them with my top-notch training crews. I never just completely send them out there in the wild. They're with the best knowledgeable staff member to help them, to get them up to speed as quickly as possible. So I know that you guys are going to struggle with this, because we struggle with it on a daily basis, but I can tell you this: you got to train everybody, and that's the hardest part. Once the ball's kind of in motion, as you lose one or two guys and you bring on new employees, it gets easier and easier. So starting that hiring process and then training process is the hardest, and then once you get past that hump, it becomes much easier. That way everybody's training everybody. You can just put him with truck supervisor and he gets trained instead of a manager. So we even have Hispanic trainers, and then we have American trainers, where if I have a new Hispanic worker and I need somebody to train them, that's what we do. So I actually then in turn took both sides of it and said, okay, now I have multiple people doing training. Just depends on who we hired and what we hired for. So I hope this helps with your training. There's a lot more that goes into it, but this may help you guys out. I'm available for questions. We've actually done put a lot of time and spent a lot of money on this training, and I get beat up with this question a lot about training and how to increase efficiencies and profit. And this is really one that I can elaborate and go on for days and days. So I'm just trying to keep it short, sweet, and to the point where you kind of get some nuggets out of this audio podcast. But yet, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact me, because I can answer anything, or maybe I'll put it into another podcast if you have any more questions. So again, Percy LaPointe, Lawn and Landscape Podcast. Thank you so much for your attention.